that plan makes sense. The former Montana governor, Republican Marc Racicot, is with us right now. Knows a thing or two, I would think, about farmers. So welcome, Governor. Let's start there and some other topics to follow. Tariff revenue help the farmers short term, says the president. What do you say?
Well, I say it's probably not as possible as what he has alleged it to be. At the end of the day, the administration has some discretion over tariffs that are collected. But frankly, what we're talking about here in terms of the damage that's being done is overwhelming across the country, in the farm country and the ranching communities of the state of Montana and the rest of the country. At the end of the day, even though they have some discretion to reallocate some of the funds that are collected as tariffs, the bottom line is that they can't do it without Congress in substantial in measure, because they just can't do it on their own. So this notion that you can rob from Peter to pay Paul is something that simply won't work. It never has worked. And at the end of the day, he doesn't have the authority to do it. So there's going to have to be some kind of consensus that's reached. And in addition to that, there's not enough being collected by some prognostications to ultimately make our farmers and our ranchers whole. And at the end of the day, there was one study done in Iowa that revealed that just the damage to cash crops is, even though they have had a spectacular year in terms of harvest, nonetheless, they could lose anywhere from $500 million to almost $5 billion ultimately because of these retaliatory tariffs.
Wow.
So this is a pipe dream, and it's an effort to distract from what the real issue is. The sad thing is, too, is that in excess of 60% of these people that are going to be damaged, they voted for this particular candidate. And
right.
At the end of the day, he's turned their back on them and has not looked out for them as they thought that he would.
You wrote about this concept, to pick up on robbing Peter to pay Paul, in your own party, the Republican Party, saying that they've abandoned their promise to protect rural America. And what you wrote there, as you can see for the Hill, is, let's be clear, it wasn't an oversight, it was a choice to prioritize tax cuts for the wealthy over health care for working Americans. So extend that thought, if you can, in terms of where you see your party right now on this issue.
Well, there's so many different places where there's a failure to come clean and also to live up to what it was that he promised the people of America and rural America. Just take Medicaid for one, and the SNAP program. In the state of Montana, we have 56 counties. 50 of them are medically underserved. They're incredibly dependent upon Medicaid funding. And Medicaid funding, as you know, I'm certain, was diminished by about $1 trillion, so it could be moved into tax relief for those at the upper end of the income brackets. So in January, right after the president was sworn in, he promised, and his words were, we cherish and we will protect the efforts to provide for those vulnerable in this country with Medicaid and the SNAP program, the nutrition program.
Right.
At the end of the day, they've moved all of that money out. They've changed it. They've diminished some of the benefits. They have reapplication procedures and constant requirements for additional administrative work by the states. And at the end of the day, they don't even come close to representing what it was that he said was going to happen. It's a hallmark of how he deals.
Now, remember, for our audience, this is coming from a former Republican governor, Governor Racicot, and we've been having, and you make this the final topic, a lot of conversations about the two parties since, I guess, well, not since the Charlie Kirk shooting, but certainly more so since then, about coming together and divisions in America and everything else. So let me end on that note. This is Erica Kirk today, Charlie's widow, on the Charlie Kirk show, and then I want to get back and get your wider thoughts on that issue. This is Erica.
I gave assurance to people that Turning Point USA is continuing, and it is. I mean, we are so blessed to have more work than we even could ever dream of. I mean, it's beautiful, and Turning Point Action, full steam ahead.
So she's full steam ahead with her organization, her husband's organization as well. And there are a lot of conservatives who are looking at that and saying, okay, great. How do you look at the country, though, Governor, after what we've seen here over the last few weeks and even going back further than that?
Yeah, I think you're right. It does go back even further than that. You know, at the end of the day, democracy is based upon the consent of each one of us as a citizen. And we not only consent to the provisions of the Constitution itself, but we give a guarantee that we'll practice the virtues of that document. You cannot have a free people live in a union of sorts that doesn't talk to each other, that can't listen to one another, that can't place themselves in the shoes of the person that they're arguing with. And at the end of the day, a democracy will fall prey to those corroding circumstances and ultimately be torn apart by the seams. So this is something that predated the extraordinary atrocity that involved Mrs. Kirk and her husband, for which I'm eternally sorrowful. But at the end of the day, we all have to change the caliber and the quality of our rhetoric. We have to recognize that a democracy requires us to advance ideas into a marketplace and to examine them. It's not all about winning every single day. There has to be some restraint and some according of just decent communications between those who see things differently.
Right.
You're not going to get your own way every single day. It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen anyplace else. Why would it happen in a democracy? But my gauge of the situation, now 77 years on the planet and about 30 or 40 years involved in political activity, is if we do not change, each one of us, and focus upon how it is that we ought to conduct our affairs, private and public, and believe in one another, in the capacity for us to make decisions on tough issues by engaging with each other than by resentment, by grievance, by performance, or whatever slogans have been instituted to try and explain our position, the democracy is not going to survive.
Well, let's hope that message is driven home and it does survive and thrive. Thank you, Governor. Former Governor of Montana, Marc Racicot, with us today.